Earlier this year, back in March, the world as we knew it changed. And while most businesses have been able to come back completely, the live music business has struggled. Most touring professionals, used to being on the road for 270 days out of the year, now find themselves at home full time. While some of them have been able to find work, most of them still are unemployed. Today we've invited Danielle Bowker with DB Counseling to talk to us about mental health.
Thank you for having me. I run a private practice offering counseling services in the Middle Tennessee area, specifically serving those who work professionally in the music industry. I have such a passion for those in the industry as I grew up around it with family in the industry. I have a husband who is a touring weekend warrior, and I know that there are particular nuances about those who work in the industry that are important for us to be aware of. So today I felt in this particular season, it would be best for us to focus on the topic of anxiety.
So now live from the CTS Learning Lab, Danielle Bowker.
So, starting out talking about anxiety, let's define it. As defined by the American Psychological Association, anxiety is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes like increased blood pressure. I think that we have all experienced anxiety at some point in our lives. Stress is a normal thing. And right now, we find that stress levels are really elevated with the uncertainty of the world. So, everyone has experienced anxiety or stress before. And one of the issues that we find is that our body's natural stress response, that fight, flight, or freeze, is really no longer needed. This was created so we could fight off bears in the wild. We're not fighting off bears in the wild anymore. Instead, we're getting a text message or having an interaction with somebody, and we are having that maladaptive stress response, that fight, flight, or freeze coming up when it's really not necessary. So, how do we deal with that? And why is there so much anxiety specifically in the music industry? So let's look at some of the research or lack thereof. There really is not a lot of research about the music industry and mental health. But what we have found is that here, a study in 2019 by Record Union, more than 7 out of 10, or 73% of independent musicians have battled stress, anxiety, and depression. And although there's not a lot of research about those who work on production, the teams behind the artists, I think that we can say that that probably boils over into the rest of the individuals working in this industry. More research, 57% said that they worry about their mental health and well being. Of those, 41% worry several times a day. Fear of failure, financial instability, and the pressure to succeed and deliver top the list of concerns. In 2018, the Journal of Occupation and Environmental Medicine put out research about travelers. If you travel for work, your mental health. So, compared with traveling 1 to 6 nights a month for work, those who traveled 21 plus nights were more likely to smoke, be sedentary, and score above clinical thresholds for alcohol dependence and mild or worse anxiety and depression symptoms. Another study in 2016, Help Musician with the University of Westminster, found that 71.1% of all respondents believed that they experienced panic attacks and or high levels of anxiety. So these are individuals in the music industry. And right now, there is current research going on with tour health research initiative that is looking specifically at all touring professionals and not just musicians. So this research is all very new. There really is not a whole lot about it. But I think if you look back, you can see that everybody struggles with anxiety. So why does the music industry suffer more from anxiety than the general public? I have a couple of ideas here. The hustle. Individuals in the industry are selling their craft, selling their creativity, putting it all out there. The work hours, working long hours, working evenings, the lack of routine or rhythm in a schedule. There's a different city every day. There might be different work, different artists that you work with each time you go out, a different team. Unhealthy habits. You're limited to eating what is available for you on the road. You're limited to exercising in a room, in a hotel room, or on a bus. So there's a lot of limited self care and some instability in finances. I think, especially now in a COVID-19 world, we find a lot of uncertainty in what is coming next, where your income is coming from. So, what can we do about anxiety? Self care is really top. I think a lot of people forget about self care. And if you want to rephrase that, it's okay to be selfish. That's something that I feel very strongly. It's really more about caring for yourself. If you don't pour into yourself, how can you pour out into the work that you do? So, self care, some different things that are focuses of self care, finding rhythm or a routine, setting boundaries and knowing your limits. It's okay to say no. Sometimes you need to say no and not overload yourself. Setting small goals. Don't set yourself up for failure. Instead, set those small baby steps to get closer and closer to a larger overarching goal. But that way you can see those positives as you meet those smaller goals. Replace unhealthy coping mechanisms with healthy ones. If you usually go out and drink after the show and you know that that's not good for you, that in the mornings you're waking up just feeling awful, what can you do instead? Would it be a good time to read a book in your bunk? Would it be a good time to meditate, to call home? Come up with relaxing activities and hobbies that you can do during your free time. I know there is little free time, especially if you're traveling. We find more free time right now, as many people are at home. So start to build up those hobbies. What are some things that you enjoy doing that really fill your tank that you could take on the road with you once you start back out touring? And seek counseling. Open up to someone about how you're feeling. It's okay to not be okay. Take control of your thoughts. One thing that is so difficult for us is control. We all want control. You want to be the boss. You want to be the one in charge of what's going on in your life. And anxiety can really creep up when you feel like you're not in control of a situation. And that anxiety is around feeling like, I don't know where this situation is going to go. And that's a lack of control. But you know, one thing that you do actually have control over is your thoughts. You have control over your thoughts, and thoughts lead to emotions, behaviors, and results. Think about this with COVID-19. Maybe right now you don't have work, and you can think about that one of two different ways. You can go into a woe is me, things are horrible mindset. Or you can go another way and look into, okay, maybe this is the time for me to think about other things that I could be doing. Which way do you go with that? And whichever way you do go with that, those thoughts are going to turn into emotions, which are going to turn into results. So remember, you do have control over your thoughts in those situations. When you find yourself kind of getting hard on yourself and having a hard time, ask yourself, is this true? This thought that's spinning through my head, is it true? Can it absolutely be true? You will find so many times that the thoughts that spin in our heads are these what ifs that we really don't know. We don't have control over those. And think about this from the perspective of a friend. If you were to come to a friend with this same situation, how would they react to you? Or if your friend had this same situation, how would you react to them? We find that we're a lot harder on ourselves than we are on those people around us. So give yourself some grace. I want to talk about some tools to combat anxiety. The more tools you have in your toolkit that you can pull out, the better for when you find that that anxiety is starting to creep in. So, I want to just talk about a couple of my favorite grounding exercises. And grounding exercises are things that you can do to pull you back into the here and now. So they're very focused on your senses. One of my favorite grounding exercises is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See, hear, feel. So what you would do is starting with 5, say 5 things that I see. I see, and just keep filling in the blank. I see, and get into that repetition. That repetition is good for calming yourself. Then you move on to 5 things I hear. Then 5 things I feel. And when we talk about feel in this exercise, that is sensory. So that is not emotions. So I feel my legs resting in the chair. I feel my hands on top of my knees. And it's okay if the things that you're hearing, seeing, feeling are the same things. You could be doing this in bed at night in the dark, and you're not really seeing much of anything at all. But that repetition will really kind of start to slow down your breathing, slow down your thinking. And that's really the main key here. Another great exercise that I love to pull out, and something that you can do in the middle of a conversation in your mind. Your mind is so strong and can do so much for you. It can mess you up a lot, but if you use it correctly, it can really bring you down from those anxious moments too. So, this is just naming 5 blue things. Just in your own head, if you find yourself starting to spiral into negative thoughts, starting to spiral into anxiety, stop and see if you can name 5 blue things in the room around you. So, tuning into that sense, that visual sense, it will take your mind off of whatever it was spinning on and give you a moment to just come back to the here and now. Another great exercise, a great tool to combat anxiety, so simple, breathing. How many times do we forget to breathe? And taking a real breath can be so recharging. So let's take a moment and take a real breath. So breathe in and let that breath fill all the way down into your belly, and hold it for a moment, and then breathe it out slowly, letting all of the air leave your lungs. You can take time at any point during the day in anything that you're doing to stop and breathe. And you might need to just remind yourself of that. Before you go into a difficult conversation, before you enter a room, stop and take a moment to take 2 deep breaths, really focusing on that breathing all the way down into your gut, and see what that does for you as you go into that next stage. Using imagery as a resource is another really great tool to have in your toolkit. So, some people meditate, and some people have a really hard time meditating. So if you start to think about what are some things, is there a place in my life where I've been where I just felt so calm? Is there a vacation spot that when I think about it, I can vividly remember what it was like? I can hear the sounds, I can smell the smells. Is it your grandmother's kitchen? Is it a beach? Is it just being with someone? Is it spiritual? But take some time to think about what is an image that could help you in difficult times and really identify all of those pieces of that image. So if you can bring it to mind later, it's much easier. Another thing, here's another tool. Tool number 5, progressive muscle relaxation. So many of us are not in tune with our bodies and what our bodies are telling us. And a lot of times our bodies are feeling that stress and anxiety before it goes to our minds and tells our minds we're feeling anxiety. So if we can be more in tune with our body, we can combat anxiety quicker. And one way that we can do this is through progressive muscle relaxation. You may not even realize that you're holding on to stress in different areas of your body until you try to stress those areas. So, in a progressive muscle relaxation, what you would do is starting with your feet, remember to focus on that breathing throughout, but starting with your feet, clench them, hold them tight, curl your toes, and hold on to that for a moment and then release. And you can feel tension leaving your body. Go ahead and move up to your legs and tighten your legs and hold them for a moment and then release. And as you move further up your body, go to your shoulders, your hands, and just take each step of moving further, even going up to your face and clenching the muscles in your face and holding them for a moment and releasing. You may not have realized until you've released that you were holding on to something there. And once you do that, it will help you to notice where were you holding on to things because you're feeling a big difference in that release. So this is something that you can find progressive muscle relaxation online, and you can go along with somebody who's talking you through it. You can do it yourself, just focusing on different parts of your body and moving top or bottom to top. Whatever works for you, but that's a way that you can focus on where you're holding on to that anxiety and try to release it. There are so many different skills, so many different tools, but I only have time to talk about a couple. And the last thing I want to talk about as a tool for combating anxiety is practicing gratitude. Set an alarm on your phone to go off at a particular time during the day where you need to stop and identify what you're grateful for in that day. And try to go a little bit deeper, not just I'm grateful for my health, I'm grateful for my family. Go a little bit deeper. Are you grateful for a particular interaction that you had during that day? Are you grateful for a particular feeling that you've had? So I think that's just a great way to really start looking at the positive of things. If you stop and think, you can really come up with some different positives. So the more you practice these skills, the easier they become. You can use them at a moment's notice when you already know, okay, 5 blue things. And you just have to remind yourself 5 blue things. Or breathing. Whichever skill you find is the best for you personally, practice it. Practice it before you need it so that you can pull it out when you do need it later. So I hope that these skills will help you and give you kind of a nugget to take away today to get started on leading a healthier life.
And gratitude is a huge part of that.
Yep.
Gratitude is a huge part. Breathing, you never realize how much you're not breathing, right? Like, my gosh, there's moments where I'm sitting there typing an email and I'm like holding my breath. And it's always like, what am I doing? Deep breaths. That's a good one.
And that control thing. I mean, I tell every single one of my clients about taking control of your thoughts, that's really all you have control over. You don't have control over the way people will respond to you, will interact with you, and that's what we usually do. That's where we usually spin our thoughts on these conversations that we have with ourselves in our minds. But what we really actually have control over is our own thoughts.
Sure, our own thoughts and our own reactions, how we react to things. I'm always telling my children that, and it seems so basic. Like, my gosh, if your sister frustrates you, you don't get in trouble for your sister frustrating you. You get in trouble for the way that you react to that. Totally.
It's so basic, but it is so easy to forget in the moment.
Yeah. So when was it that you really decided that this is where you wanted to shift your attention?
Well, I've always been really interested in psychology, and that just kind of led directly into counseling for me. And so that's always been a passion of mine, but I didn't realize until later in life that I could meld together my own personal experiences as someone having grown up around the industry into the work that I do. And I find that clients will talk to me about their work and being in the music industry and the travel and the different parts of that work that is different than a regular 9 to 5 job. And they have found that I can understand that a bit differently. I can understand the language. I can understand that the rhythm or lack of rhythm in their lives and what different areas would be important to focus on. And in my practice, we focus a lot on life-work balance. We focus a lot on anxiety and depression. Those are all just kind of main things that individuals tend to come to me for.
Like, how would you say that that has shifted now that people can't come to see you in person? Has it opened up more doors, or has it shut some things down for you?
You know, I actually really feel like there are a lot of positives that have come out of doing some video therapy and phone sessions with my clients. It's a lot easier to have that communication with them. And I think as people start to go back out on the road, it's going to really help them to stay connected. That therapy is something that doesn't have to be in an office 1 hour a week. It can be a phone call, it can be a Zoom, it can be whatever type of interaction you need in that moment. And so I love that we're kind of breaking the box of that traditional therapy. And one of the things that I love to do in my practice and did before COVID-19 is walk and talk therapy sessions where you can meet an individual at a park and go for a walk and have a therapy session. It doesn't have to be sitting on a couch in an office. And I love that more people are more open to that now that we've kind of been forced to this different type of treatment option.
I've often felt that, like, sometimes the best conversations that I'm able to have with another person are when I'm actually just driving in a car and we don't have to look at each other, because I feel like you're more vulnerable and you're less aware of what someone else might be thinking of you when you're just looking straight ahead and you're just having an honest conversation.
Absolutely. I think the walk and talk therapy absolutely fits that kind of thought, that when you're moving, when you're not having to sit face to face, it's a little bit easier to be open. And you also find that one of the things that I do is I work with trauma and a particular modality called EMDR. And one of the things within EMDR is that you use bilateral stimulation to be able to kind of get the mind moving. And simply put, bilateral stimulation is connecting your left side of your brain to your right side of your brain and kind of doing something back and forth. So, walking is automatically providing you with bilateral stimulation, which is something that EMDR therapists are trying to put together in an office setting. But if you go outside and you're walking and talking with your therapist, whether you're on the phone with them or walking beside them, it's already starting to build up that information processing in your mind to get things connecting.
Thanks for joining us today, Danielle. If people have more questions, how do they get a hold of you?
Thank you for having me. You can find more information about my practice at www.dbcounseling.com or follow me on Instagram at Danielle Bowker LPC.
Follow us on social media and tune in next time where we'll be live from the CTS Learning Lab.